And now, everybody, MC Serch. MC Serch. MC Serch. MC Serch. MC Serch.
Serch will never stand still.
All right, it's the other white meat, MC Serch. Welcome to another edition of Serch Says. We are here, ladies and gentlemen, with a very famous appropriator, if you will. No, I'm just kidding. Because you know what? You're in a lot of, you're a white guy in a lot of black spaces, and I relate to that.
Sure.
Danny Strong is here, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure. I got to tell you, I got to give you a lot of naches for my people who are not of the tribe. That means props. Your work not only as an actor, which I love. I can go to How I Met Your Mother and your characters on Seinfeld and your characters on Friends, which are super dope and some of my favorite shows. My personal favorite story that I did on research on you is that you, at 25, wrote a show that never got picked up about you and your homeboy killing someone for their rent-controlled apartment. So major props for you for that. So, are we allowed to touch?
Yeah.
Okay.
We just fist bumped for all you listening.
Yeah, and watching.
Yeah, and watching.
This will be on YouTube.
All right.
I love that. I love that theater. I love that idea. And I really want to know what the name of that show was.
It was a movie. It was called Die, Harry, Die. There you have it.
I love that.
And I was attached to star in it. That was, when I wrote it, it was a very rewarding experience. And I thought, okay, I'm going to pursue a writing career now. But this is a cool little independent film. I'm going to stay. This could be my Swingers or my Rocky, and I'm just going to stay attached to this.
And that was a big move. That was a big move around that time.
So I wouldn't, and some people tried to buy it without me attached, and I said no. Stuck to my guns. To this day, never been made. But hey, stuck to my guns. That's what matters.
I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at you as a 25-year-old who stuck to your guns. Now, did you write this with a partner, or is this just you writing it?
I just wrote it.
Were you high?
No, I was not high.
Okay.
I was not high. I was never
and let me just tell you, if that's not your thing, that's fine.
Yeah. Not my thing. Just makes me fall asleep. Never been
Speaking of high, we'll get to Dopesick later. But,
there you go.
Nice non-segue. But I love the passion of writing, and I wanted to kind of go back a little bit to when you were growing up in California. Did you have like a circle of friends that were into like music? Was lyrics kind of an impetus for you in terms of writing, written word?
No, not at all. I grew up in Manhattan Beach, which, when I grew up there in the 80s, was this lower middle class beach town. So it's nothing like what it is now, which is very wealthy. And we were just, it was different. You could, after school at 7, 8, 9, we would all just go play sports.
Right.
We didn't have parental supervision, and my mom was a telephone operator who worked the shift right out of school. Right. So I was just kind of sort of a latchkey kid, but it wasn't a lonely thing because me and my friends would just literally ride our bikes and go play sports. So it was a very suburban existence, I guess you would say.
Was it a mixed crowd? Did you grow up with a lot of people who were just multicultural, or was it just very much one-sided?
Not really that mixed. It was mostly white. A friend of mine was black when I was 10, 11, 12.
The quintessential, we all had a black friend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. But he was a very good friend of mine, and I think that was actually influential on me.
That's cool.
To a certain extent, as far as, I'd go on to write a lot of civil rights material, and I'm sure that was part of it.
Yeah. And, when you're talking about growing up in Manhattan Beach, there's also this, you talk about the separation of that quiet, quaint little Manhattan Beach town, and then obviously 30 minutes south, 30 minutes north, you have Compton, you have hip hop growing up, from that. Did that
might as well have been 200
Europe.
miles away.
Yeah, it might have been Europe. It might as well have been New York.
It was not even part of my childhood. I mean, literally, my childhood was like a half-mile area that we would ride our bike,
Right.
and it was called the tree section of Manhattan Beach, and that was basically my existence.
So what did you listen to? What kind of music you listened to in the tree section?
Oh man,
the Smiths,
Wham.
the Cure,
no,
Wham,
and Duran.
Wake Me
and
Up
Prince.
Before You Go.
Dude, Wake Me Up Before You Go was
the shit.
No, it was Careless Whisper. That was deep. Careless
That was the one that
Whisper
you just looked up into the sky, you
was
and your
deep.
friends.
And it was the video. I don't know if you remember the video.
I remember
but George Michael's heart gets broken in that video, and my heart was broken in that video for him. And so, you know.
That's really
that was deep.
That's very sweet. It's a very sweet story.
Yeah.
And
Huge
then,
Prince fan as a kid.
Yeah.
So much so I was Prince for Halloween. At
I'm
10
trying
years
to
old.
I'm trying to picture it because you had the height for Prince, obviously.
Yeah. I think I'm same height now, not then.
Right.
Yeah.
But did you recognize Prince as like a sex symbol, like when you were coming up with? Because I always kind of identify music, for me at least. Music has always been this kind of emotional identifier as well as this spiritual. It just took me to a different place. When I heard "Let's Go Crazy," it didn't matter where I was. I wanted to go crazy, right? Like Purple Rain. To me, there was rain. There was rain that was purple. Like it was just there's a very connective for me. There was a connective tissue to the music that was being made, the lyrics that were being said, and the artist who was saying them. For you, it sounds like it was it was songs. They were great songs.
Yeah.
They were sing-alongs.
I think it was the movie Purple Rain was a big deal to me, I think, when I was a kid. I think I saw it the day it opened, and I think that was why I became such an obsessive Prince fan, was because of Purple Rain. And I'd wear purple all the time, and I mean, you know.
Sign of royalty.
There you go.
And as a Jew, we want to be royal.
Yeah, exactly.
More times than not.
Yeah.
And the other the other thing that I loved about Prince always came across as gay until you saw him with a gang of women. Like, and he was almost androgynous in a lot of ways, but you knew he wasn't gay, but he could play gay.
I think at 10 that wasn't even on my radar. You know,
I don't think I differ.
Yeah, I don't think I had any sense of that as a 10-year-old. I think it was just he was a rock star
and he was
dressed
super
like
cool.
a rock. I think it was just, to me, that was a rock star vibe.
Yeah, no,
you know, I didn't think in terms of sexuality.
Far Rockaway Queens, we were definitely super over sexualized at 10.
Yeah.
My mother for my bar mitzvah gave me Playboy.
Okay.
Because I was already stealing it at 11 from my father. So, you know, I just was super over-sexualized. So it was just automatically kind of how I saw him was this you know, amazing, short sex god. Anyway, moving on to you. The other thing that I read that I thought was really interesting is when you were working on, as an actor, you started to really develop this passion for writing, and I think it was before you worked on The Butler, you did Recount, right? Is that the timing?
That was the first thing I sold. Right. Was the movie. It was a pitch for the movie for Recount.
Yeah.
That was after writing for 7 years. So I didn't sell anything for 7 years.
So no co-writing credits, not because I couldn't find anything. Like
zero.
So were you ever in a writing room, even just a friend?
No.
Nothing.
No,
so
I was writing screenplays. I was acting, and I was writing screenplays at night, in the afternoon, whenever. I mean, I was unemployed quite a bit as an actor, so I probably had more time than I just stated. But yeah, so it was a long journey to my first sale, which was the movie Recount.
Which I love because you talked about that a little bit in your when you. And thank you for this. And I don't mean this in any other way, but thank you for giving back as a acting teacher and kind of committing that time as well to tell people like, yo, it's not an overnight success. You got to really work for it. You got to put in those 10,000 hours. And I think that a lot of young people see, I just saw him on TV on Seinfeld. And I just saw him on this. So he must have been able to finance or get into the right rooms or connect with the right directors. Was that ever kind of a spiel for you? Like, oh, there's Fred Savage. I'm going to give him, I'm on set with Doogie Howser. I'm going to,
I definitely, I never gave my stuff to actors, but I did get to meet producers that I would give my scripts to over the years during that 7-year period. So it was, so for sure there was, from the acting career, I was meeting people. But, the number of passes that I racked up during that period of time is pretty staggering. I mean, the first 3 or 4 years, the number of managers and agents that passed on me. I mean, because I had a friend of mine who was a producer who really liked Die Harry Die, that very first script I wrote. So, and he was a great guy. His name's Robin Bissell. He was Gary Ross's producing partner who directed The Hunger Games, and this guy produced The Hunger Games. And so he was constantly giving my scripts to agents and managers, and just no one wanted me. And they just script after script after script. So it was, yes, I did have connections from those experiences. But it wasn't like the doors just open wide open, and it was like, oh well, because you're on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, we're now going to buy your screenplay. It just wasn't. It just isn't how it worked. Each script is its own thing, and either people want it or they don't. And by the way, it's still like that today. I mean, when I took the pitch for Dopesick out, I thought, well, I've got a best-selling book. This is, I think, a terrific project. And everyone but one company passed.
Wow.
So it's just still how it is to a certain extent. It's also because these projects cost so much money, not just for them to produce, but to market. So it's a massive investment. So I think the days of people just constantly buying stuff is that's just not my experience anymore.
And obviously the rewards that came with Recount were just, I mean, I'm sure you were a little kind of shocked. I mean, not only because the cast was so amazing, but I mean, you got the treasures on the shelf.
Yeah.
Where do you keep the treasures?
Yeah. It's funny, for Recount, I actually lost a bunch of awards, although I did win the Writers Guild Award, which was awesome.
Yeah.
It was Game Change that was kind of the one that had a great award season, and I won a bunch of stuff for that. Oh, I got a couple in my living room and then a bunch in my office.
So none in the bathroom. You're not that guy, right?
None in the bathroom.
Yeah,
none in the bathroom.
I love that.
I like him too much. I don't play it cool with my awards. I got the Emmys right in the living room.
Nice.
If I could put a spotlight on them, I would.
Yes,
but
just the clapper.
Yeah, something.
Right. That's the way to do it.
Set of mirrors that surround it. So,
I have a dear friend of mine who's sold a lot of records, and all of his gold albums are in his laundry room.
Well, there you go. I mean, it's one badass laundry room.
It's a kick-ass laundry room.
Yeah, totally.
But the other thing I think that's really interesting is that around 2010, if I remember correctly, you worked with Lee Daniels on The Butler. Was that the first time you connected with Lee?
Yeah.
And working together? How did that come about?
So I got hired to write the movie The Butler. And I wrote the script. Was an incredible experience for me. It's actually sort of similar to writing Dopesick in that the subject matter was so emotional. The story of the civil rights movement, and Dopesick is the story of the opioid crisis. And they were such powerful events to wallow in for years, right? And all that research. So I wrote the script, and my agents, they loved it. So we turned it into Sony because that was the studio. But they also gave it, this was on a Friday, and they gave it to Steven Spielberg on a Friday as well. By Monday, the studio hadn't read it, but Spielberg had read it and said he wanted to do it.
It was Shabbos, so he had nothing else to do but
well,
read.
It's also like, though you get to understand why people like him become him. For him to literally just read that, boom, the biggest director in the history of the business, and like he read the script right away before the studio, and he said he wanted to do it.
Wow.
And that all of a sudden, this went from a script that was probably the biggest long shot at the studio to red hot. After, I don't know, a long period of time, he decided not to make it. But Lee Daniels had read it in that interim, and Lee was sort of waiting, hoping that Spielberg would drop out.
Right.
And so the day Spielberg dropped out, Lee Daniels raised his hand and then got the job the next day. So I went from Spielberg to Lee Daniels, which was amazing. It's Academy Award nominated director and a really perfect director for the project. So that was the beginning of the relationship.
But I find it interesting, obviously, and this was a little bit before, obviously, the life that we're living now where everything is under a microscope, appropriation, white people in black spaces, the voice and how we perceive language, how we perceive Me Too movement, obviously George Floyd, all of the things that we experience. And when I say we, not only as human beings, but we as white people in black spaces. When you were working on The Butler, was there ever a time where Lee questioned the authenticity of the language that was being used? Did you guys ever go back and forth in terms of saying, hey, Danny, man, I give you a lot of props. This is dope, but...
Yeah, so to even take it a step further, I mean, this was 2009 when I was hired to write this project, right? And that would never happen now. I mean, I wouldn't even be on a list to write the project now, and maybe that's for the best. Maybe that's how it should be. Maybe I shouldn't have been the one hired to write this in 2009. For me, the article was sent to me. I was deeply moved by it. I had written, one of the reasons why they came to me was because post-recount, I had written a script on Brown v. Board of Education of Thurgood Marshall succeeding in winning Brown v. Board of Education. And so they'd really liked that script. They saw I was really passionate about civil rights. So it all came from a place of passion at the end of the day, which was why they came to me. But that certainly wouldn't happen today, and I don't think it should happen today.
Where's the passion for civil rights come from?
I don't really know. I mean, I think it's a combination of things. I've been enraged about racism, I think, since I was 8, 9 years old, watching, I think, movies, to be honest with you. I think because I didn't grow up in some fiery, community with racial
not really,
strife.
But close. 92, the riots, L.A. riots. I mean, I'm
talking way pre that.
No, I'm clear.
Because I was 8, 9, 10 when I was kind of like really angry about racism and really, really fired up about it. But I do think it's probably just from movies and from watching movies. Do the Right Thing was a huge kind of seminal moment for me. I think I was 13 when that came out. Yeah. So that was a really seminal moment watching that movie. So then when it came to Lee and The Butler, 100%. I mean, and by the way, it's not just projects. It's not just black themed projects where I am open-minded to feedback. Right, it's everything I've ever done, everything I've ever worked on. I've had zero expertise in, right? So I'm constantly going to on Dopesick. I hired an Appalachian author to be a consultant, so that we didn't get any of the Appalachian world wrong, so that we didn't stereotype it, right? So on The Butler, we didn't have to hire anyone. There was Lee Daniels, right? Right. And so I 150% followed his lead on all cultural issues. Yeah. And I thought that I'd gotten the script pretty far. I think it was a really complicated script. I think probably the most complicated script I'd ever written, because it was, the history of the civil rights movement through the eyes of a White House butler and his son over 40 years. I mean, it's
such a great
extremely ambitious, right? Yeah. So that was not easy to do. And then when Lee came in, Lee added his spin. He said, this stuff feels totally wrong to me right here. Great. Well, what should it be? Right. We go back and forth. And pretty quickly, I think he felt really good about working with me. We had this kind of nice back and forth. I'm also, because I write about so many things that are not things that I know anything about, right? So I come in really open-minded. I don't come in defensive. And all I want is for the script to be as good as it could be. I mean, when I wrote Recount, I had no background in politics or in journalism. I was just fired up. I was just angry about the Iraq War. That was really where that came from. Originally. So anyways, that it's always been like that. And I think people, they bring it up, particularly on The Butler and on Empire, how does this work? And the truth is that how it works is it works the same on anything I've ever done, which is research and then being open-minded and empathy for my characters, whoever they are, right. trying to just get in people's heads, and then giving the script to people that know more about the subject matter than I do to see where I went wrong. Tell me where did I go wrong, because I want this to be as authentic as possible. Right. And that's and in the case of Empire, I mean, we had a writer's room.
Shout out to my man Carlito.
Yeah, Carlito's fantastic, right? Like a true one of the MVPs of the writers' room, right? Yeah. And so
name one, but I mean,
there's some Malcolm Spellman and Attica Locke have come out of that writers' room, creating their own shows, and so I was one of the only white people in the writers' room, right? So when it came to all cultural issues, right, I'm listening to everyone else. Right. And I'm loving it. I loved that experience. I just loved learning about things I didn't know, and a lot of where Empire came from was the press tour on The Butler. I was the only white guy on the press tour with Lee and all of Lee's friends, right? And everyone was so cool and funny and dynamic. And I sometimes think about that early draft of the pilot of The Butler, not The Butler of Empire, and it was like, it all came from like hanging out with Lee's friends,
Right.
And The Butler's press tour. Right. So much of it came from from that experience, and then the same thing that I do on everything, which is, where I get a lot of stuff from is watching YouTube videos.
Right.
On Dopesick, it was just watching these coal miner videos. And they'd always be 10 minutes long, right? And they're very authentic because it's not a professional documentary. It's someone that lives in that world, takes a camera in there,
and they walk around and they just live their life.
I get so much. I get a lot from those, from that type of research as well. So it's a very open experience, and now because of the sensitivity, that goes with that. Which I'm totally empathetic to as well. I get it, I totally get it. And there's so many different things that I want to work on. So if me working on a Black project is going to upset people, then I just won't do that, right? So I haven't been, Lee Daniels every 5 months calls me. He's like, when are we doing our next thing? What are we doing next? I'm like, I don't think I should, Well,
that's not fair to you. I mean, look, the one thing I wanted to say, there's like 22 things. I just very enamored with what you're saying here because I think your path is really unique, and I think it's really an anomaly, and I'll explain why. There's some very well-known Black executives. One that comes to mind is a guy out of your neck of the woods named Big U. And Big U worked with Nipsey Hussle, may he rest in peace. And he said that he worked with a specific white Jewish, like OG gangster kid from Long Island named Steve Lobel. And they said you always need to have a white guy go in the room. I can be the Black guy with the talent, but in the music business, you always need a white guy to walk in the room. You always need that, right? Mm-hmm. It's still kind of true to this day. I think that in Hollywood, it's becoming less. With the Issa Raes of the world, with the Malcolm Spellmans, with the Kenya Barrises, with the Anthony Andersons, with the Artists First, with the Will Packers. I mean, I can go on and on. Reggie Hudlin.
Sure, Ava DuVernay.
Yeah, and big shout out. I love Ava.
Yeah,
I was going to just talk about her last, but there's so much ability now for that wall to be shattered. They're still in the music business. Most of the Black urban divisions are still run by white guys. If that's a tragedy, it is what it is, and it is a tragedy, but it is what it is, right? So you work on The Butler. It's amazing. You guys build this rapport. Was there this sense that Lee said, okay, with Empire, I need the white guy to walk in the room?
No, it wasn't that at all. It was, we were in post on The Butler. It got to a point where I was kind of the only person Lee would listen to on notes. Because he really trusted my notes, right? And so we were just getting along like gangbusters on the Butler post-production process. And then he just kept frequently saying, what are we doing next? What are we doing next? We're magic. What are we doing next?
That's great.
So then I came up with the idea for Empire right around that time. And as soon as I came up with the idea,
How did you pitch the idea to him, Empire? What did you say?
So I came up with the idea in L.A., flew back to New York, which is actually where I live, and he was there too. We had lunch, because I told him I got an idea for him. And I took him through, I pitched it as a movie. That was my idea, is as a movie. But I took him through to be honest with you, exactly what the show was. I just said it's like King Lear or The Lion in Winter and a hip-hop empire, except, King Henry II or King Lear, instead of daughters, he's got 3 sons. And I took him through each son, and that his wife had Cookie, yeah, which I didn't have the name for at the time, but I said his wife just gets out of prison, and she went to prison for the money that started the record label that turned him into a huge star. And so sort of the inciting incident of the movie is her coming out of prison, and she really wants her gay son to take over the empire, but he hates the son because he's gay, and he wants the other son who's much more raw. It was just kind of the whole thing. And I remember at one point I said, yeah, and the mother, this is going to be a great part. This is like Mama Rose on crack. And then he started screaming, yes, darling, Mama Rose on crack, darling. Like, I knew he'd love that. So it was...
if I could get tattoos, I'm Jewish, and if I was allowed to get tattoos, I think I would get Mama Rose on crack on the back of my neck.
Yeah, I'll never forget him screaming,
by the way,
yes, darling.
You get a +1. You and your guests get into the club for free on that fucking one. That's amazing.
So that's how that came to be.
Let me ask you a question, because, and maybe I'm wrong in thinking this, so please correct me, but it seemed like Empire had a lot of inertia, right?
Yeah.
And then it kind of fell flat. And then I think you'll be able to relate to this.
Disagree.
Let me get to my point. So, it comes out, it's a great beginning. And then, Seinfeld had the Chinese restaurant moment. How I Met Your Mother was the challenge accepted moment. I think it was the 5th or 6th show, whatever. I think, could be wrong, I think when Taraji P. Henson, Cookie, got up and said, hey, you want to see an ass? Here's an ass. That was your Chinese restaurant moment. That's when the whole world took notice. And again, I might be wrong, but that was like the 5th episode in.
I love you, but you're wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, massive hit right out of the gate. Literally, the pilot had massive numbers.
I remember that.
And then each week, it was a phenomenon. Literally right out of the gate, it was crazy. I've never experienced anything like that. And I don't know if anyone on it had, because each week of season 1, the ratings went up all the way to the end, all the way to the finale. We went up every single week for 12 episodes straight. And then we go into season 2, and there's all this buzz, all this spotlight on us, all this, and the show, and then all of a sudden it's not as good as it was, or it's lost its way. And the truth was, it didn't really. It still was really high quality. It was, the numbers stayed the same all the way through seasons 2. It was extremely high numbers, but there was definitely some unforced errors we made that people just exploded on, as far as just because it was just so red hot and so crazy successful. But the show stayed pretty strong through season 2, and then season 3, it was it's a soap opera, right? So these things, it just gets really hard to top yourself. And to one thing we did that was I would call an unforced error, or wasn't as elegant as it could be, is that we burned through stories so fast. So it was just turning it, which is what made it so addictive. Yeah. But then also, I don't want to say we ran out of gas, because we went 6 seasons and people loved it. So it was still really a successful run of television. And yes, we didn't keep the momentum of that first red hot season, but that first red hot season was a phenomenon. It was the biggest thing in entertainment during that.
There's no
4
doubt.
or 5 month period. So
there's no doubt.
It was. I still think we delivered through the run of the show, a really quality show. And even though we couldn't maintain astronomical numbers, up until the last season, we had really high numbers. Or strong. I would say really strong numbers.
Yeah.
So.
And also, one of the things I was thinking about, and I want to kind of talk about Dopesick, because whether you know this or not, I'm in recovery. 11/11 will be 10 years, and we have an entire podcast about that. Thanks. Although that was not my drug of choice. Were you aware of, when you were doing Empire, how many rappers were mentioning Oxy in their records? Or that was between Percocet, Molly Percocet, Oxy, Lean. That was an impetus maybe in the back of your head somewhere saying, I wonder what the bigger picture is, or is just, again, music plays no part of it. It doesn't matter if Future is saying it, or Lil Wayne is saying it, or even Herbo G or whoever are mentioning Pop and Oxy like Tic Tacs. That's a lyric from somebody's record.
Yeah.
I pop Oxy like Tic Tacs.
I don't think I noticed it as far as is sort of clocking it and any different to weed references or other kind of substance references. It didn't stick out to me is there's something going on here with Oxy, because at that point Oxy and opioids were part of the culture, part of the drug culture at that point. So it didn't particularly pop out for me. Yeah. It was actually the producer came to me in, I think, 2018, John Goldwyn, really talented producer, and there'd been this big article about the Sackler family in the New Yorker. Yeah, no, I'm very well aware of that. Yeah, and that article blew the story up and changed the Sacklers' lives. Patrick Braden Keefe wrote that article for the New Yorker. And that was the start of it, because that's what he came to me to say, do you want to do a movie about the Sacklers? And I said, I don't know. Well, I read the article, and let me take a look at it again. And because I'd read the article months earlier. And so then I kind of dove into it, and it was, I call it the Purdue Pharma rabbit hole.
Yeah.
That once you start falling down that rabbit hole, you can't believe what they did. You can't believe the criminal behavior.
I will
that
share
was
with you.
endless.
I'm very
that's
well
where
aware of it.
that's how I fell into this story. Was just shock and awe. At the deception and the criminality.
I wanted to ask you about something, though, as you kind of went through this, because obviously what I love about this, and you said it before, you said that the butler was, really complicated. But I think you kind of, in Dopesick, kind of interweaving 3 fucking stories.
Yeah, totally complicated.
Way complicated.
Yeah.
Like,
that's
you're talking about,
shit,
bro, that's like fucking Monopoly versus the Rubik's Cube with 16 pieces instead of 4.
Accurate.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But no,
For
thank
noticing,
you.
I appreciate that.
No, thank you, because, in that intersect, and I think Rosario Dawson, Michael Keaton, they do such a brilliant job.
Incredible.
Fucking brilliant job. But, when you're dealing with this opioid addiction, and now that you've kind of cut, you're in post and you're doing the press on it, now we're 2 years into it, right? 2020 was the largest amount of deaths to opioid, and 2021 we're almost going to double it, right? Now that you have a 30,000-foot view almost of the opioid addiction in the U.S., do you understand the idea between pharmaceutical addiction and natural addiction? Because the way I see it, and please correct me because, you might be in a little deeper than I am. There's usually people that are born with addiction, right? They say that there's a certain amount of dopamine that's presented to the body. Certain people are just born as addicts, right? It doesn't manifest till later, whether it's overeating, sex, drugs, whatever. But this is pharmaceutical addiction. These are people that are looking for relief from an aspirin. They're looking for relief from an Advil. And they're now being created into pharmaceutical addiction, right? Mm-hmm. The criminality there is obvious, but do you understand the difference now that you're a director and a producer of a show like Dopesick?
Sure. I mean, what you just explained is one of the great tragedies of the opioid crisis.
Right.
Is people seeking medication for pain relief are given essentially heroin in a pill.
Yeah.
They're given a highly addictive narcotic that their doctor has been made to believe is actually practically non-addictive, less than 1% addictive, in the fairest case scenario, less addictive than other opioids.
Right.
Right? All of this, completely untrue.
Right. Easily to wean off.
Easily to, I mean, at one point
off.
they gave out studies that said if you're taking 60 milligrams a day or less, you can quit cold turkey without withdrawals. That was a study that they gave. Yep. So here's sort of like
We need to do the rock quotes around the study, though.
Yeah,
It's a study, yeah.
Here's the sort of the kind of the simplistic baseline of what Purdue Pharma did, right? Is that they sold this drug, OxyContin, as less addictive than other opioids, using the phrase less than 1% of people get addicted. Sales reps using that phrase. And the concept of the drug, that it was less addictive than other opioids, is a lie, okay? That is untrue. So what does that mean? That means every single piece of evidence, everything they give to support their argument that their drug is less addictive, that's also a lie. Mm-hmm. So that leads to a sprawling amount of deceptive, criminal misbranding, whatever phrase you want to use, of information, and that's the rabbit hole I fell down.
Yeah.
So this study they gave out, that was a lie. Oh, these blood charts. Oh, they're fraudulent blood charts. Oh, and the 1% study. Oh, that doesn't even exist. Right. It's literally one after the next in your mind. Just you're in this shock because the consequences of it were so staggering. Right. And everyone talks about the number of people that have died from opioid overdoses, right? 500, 600,000. I mean, the number just keeps growing. Yeah. Complete tragedy. But what about the millions of people that are struggling through addiction issues, that have lost years of their lives? What about their family members, the family members of people that died, or the family members that are dealing with the trauma of a loved one who's going through addiction? I mean, the tentacles of this spread to millions of people. And for what? For what?
For profit.
No, for like 20 people in one family making money.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's it.
Yeah,
it's 25 people, 30 people. I don't know exactly, but it's a very, very small group of people in one family buying art. I've always thought if you could make a sizzle reel of Mortimer D.A. Sackler's art collection, which a friend of mine in the art world says is actually a very shitty art collection, so he doesn't even have good taste, I guess, according to my friend who's in the art world. If you could just make a sizzle reel of his paintings, of what he's bought with this money that has caused so much suffering, it would be, I think, one of the bleakest, most tragic things you could ever watch. I mean, just the absurdity of it. Yeah, it's staggering and enraging.
Well, I want to share something with you that I hope will put a smile on your face.
Okay.
I'm working with a company called MSP Recovery. It's 3 lawyers out of Florida. Don't hold Florida against them.
Okay.
The long and short of it is this. They've come up with a way of helping states recover money that was fraudulently paid out. And we met with the governor of North Carolina, Governor Cooper, and we met with the attorney general. And obviously there have been payouts to the states. North Carolina, and I can tell you this to your face because I met with them last week, North Carolina is using the money they're getting back to open up addiction centers all through North Carolina. It's the largest single-handed non-for-profit addiction centers that are based on education, rehabilitation, and growth, right? So if you're an addict in North Carolina and you suffered from anything, the opioid money that they're getting back through MSP and through their recovery program, they're building rehab facilities to get people back on their feet, re-educate them, because there's a certain amount of brain loss, to re-educate them, to get them back into public, or private sector, depending on what they want to do or what they did do. And this model we are now taking out we're meeting with the Attorney General in Georgia, literally on Friday, and 17 other states. And MSP is doing this work on no short behalf of scumbags like these, but seeing it as a bigger way to help others. When you hear something like that, does it put your work in a different perspective?
No, I'm thrilled to hear it. I mean, it's one of the main goals of the show, right? Which is, the show basically has 2 main goals. One, which is to document their crimes for the country.
Well done, by the way.
Thank you. And then in the last 2 episodes, we start to get into recovery. And those episodes haven't aired yet for people if they're listening at a later date. At this point, they haven't aired. But we get into recovery, and one of the sort of main things that we're trying to achieve, was so important to Beth Macy, who wrote the book Dopesick, is to destigmatize Suboxone and buprenorphine, which are extremely effective in treating opioid use disorders. And the number of people that get it's something like 12 to 15% of people that need buprenorphine actually get it. It's like saying 15% of people that need chemotherapy are actually getting it. It's a horrifying statistic. And access is a huge issue. There's racial disparity in access.
Oh, yeah.
People that are black and brown have a much harder time getting access to this drug than people that are white. And then people that are white aren't able to get access to it at a sufficient level. And then at the same time, there are factions that are trying to, that are very anti it. So one of our goals is to hopefully shine a light on Suboxone as a treatment, methadone as a treatment, on MAT, medical assisted treatments, to show. And by the way, if you have an opioid use disorder, it doesn't mean you have to go on these drugs, right? But if you can't get off it, because it's changed your brain chemistry, and it can take up to 2 years for your brain chemistry. Correct. Your brain to recover, and that's after you stopped.
That's exactly right.
So these drugs can be extremely effective for many people. So hearing you talk about that is fantastic. And I know that there's a lot of activists that are very excited about this show, that are hoping the show can help pave the way to exactly what I'm talking about and what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because, well, I say funny, not ha-ha funny, but it's funny because when I was made aware of the show, I was already knee-deep in this project, and not just my podcast, but what I was doing with MSP, and it was that light switch, that goes off in your head that goes, wait a minute, is it like the mouse before the cat, or the cat before the mouse, or the mousetrap? Because would have North Carolina even thought about doing this kind of outreach if they didn't have a problem, and if the problem didn't come from the money that they secured from the lawsuits? Would this even be, so it's like, are we helping because we have harmed? Or are we recognizing that we can just turn a blind eye, but instead we do something else?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, obviously for me, not only just being in recovery, but being around people that have been in rooms and suffer, really suffer. The challenge for me is to understand where that passion comes from, right? Like for you, you don't really seem to have a passion for addiction as much as it is for telling a great story.
Yeah, and then it becomes a passion for
Right.
addiction.
No, and
yeah,
that- no,
but
and-
it didn't start there at all. I mean,
No, it's not like you was like, oh, I'm going to do this for my aunt who OD'd, or I did this,
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm very fortunate. I've never had an opioid use disorder, and I don't have any close relatives or friends
vices
that I know of that have. Not really. I'm kind of boring. It's funny, you were talking about a friend of yours, a white guy who's an OG, you said. And, I'm like the opposite of an OG. I'm just like this totally
You're an
nerdy,
LG.
like nebbishy Jewish guy, I mean, I've got a lot of allergies,
Right.
okay? And I take Allegra every day, and it helps with the allergies.
Shout out to Allegra, by the way.
Shout out to Allegra. Thank you, makers of Allegra. And so for me, it literally...
By the way, the Sacra family made Allegra, by the way.
I can't take it anymore then. Says no more. No, that's not true. I'm still on Allegra. By the way, it took me a while to come to Allegra. I went through a lot of these allergy medications.
Oh, my goodness. I feel so bad for people who have allergies. I also feel bad for people who have food allergies. And they can't figure that out.
Yeah.
That's just the worst.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's all these things. But it just comes from, I just work on so many different things. And for me to want to say, oh, that's worth 2 years of my life, it's got to be, I think, pretty profound.
Oh, yeah.
What's going on here. And simultaneously, the goal is that it's also going to be great. It's not just activism, right? It's like, oh no, this is gonna be a great movie or a great TV show. It's a very exciting piece.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's not about the story.
Or no one's gonna see it, or it's not gonna get made.
Right.
Or if it gets made, it won't be successful. And the themes won't be the activism will get lost.
Somebody said, "Don't let the truth get in the way of a great story." I remember somebody telling me in Hollywood, "Don't let the truth get in the way of a great story." I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? But now I kind of understand it a little bit since I've kind of...
I'd be a little weary of that one too, though. Sometimes people say that to make shit up in cases where you shouldn't.
No. He meant it. He meant it in... Look, it's not like you can tell the Sacra story as the Sacras, right? Because I'm sure you've got like a lineage, a literary lineage of lawyers who are like, wait a minute, hold on. This scene right here, this is... between First Amendment, between people.
We did pretty good.
I'm sure you did.
I mean, we got a lot of scenes that are things that actually happen. We've got a lot of scenes. Kind of one of my main techniques I use to dramatize true stories, because I've done several of them at this point, is that not every scene happened. But I will use fictional scenes as a conduit to get true facts out.
Right.
So the scene is there to get true information out, whether it's character information that's true, in exposition that's plot, whatever it is.
Yeah, of course.
So it's a can be a little bit of a tightrope at times. Sometimes not really. It's just sort of, that's fine. That's no big deal.
But what have your compromises been? You talk about the 7 years that you worked as an actor, right, to become a writer, and then this. I
was working as an actor for about 15 years before, but it was 7 years just writing that I wasn't successful.
And then, your passion project about Harry dying, I mean, you had to mourn that because you couldn't get that made, and let's just have a shiva on that for that. But, you had to compromise something. Was it relationships? What was compromised during your time kind of growing this career that you're like, you look back and go, I wish I would have spent more time with blank?
I don't know, my sanity. I don't know, my emotional
Really?
state. I mean, I wouldn't say my sanity.
Did you leave anybody behind? Girlfriends, boyfriends,
I don't know.
significant others,
I don't
dogs,
know.
whales,
Dogs, no. I mean,
birds.
I don't know. In
the
my
hummingbirds.
20s, there was a lot of girls that I liked that didn't quite like me back. So what are you gonna do? You know,
Right.
So it was. Yes, I was. It wasn't like I sacrificed.
I don't use that.
Dating.
Well, let's just be clear. I don't like the word I don't like sacrifice. Because sacrifice means you had to give up something.
Yeah.
I think compromise is a better equator for work because compromise means you get something in return.
For me, it wasn't a compromise at all because I was so passionate about what I was doing. You know, it was very fulfilling for me. And as writing, even though I wasn't succeeding, in a traditional sense, which means I was selling or getting paid for it, it was a very rewarding for me artistically, especially because an acting career is particularly difficult. It's completely rejection filled. Nonstop. They don't want to see you for the audition. You didn't get the call back. You didn't get the part, right? So I'm hearing that all year long. And I was actually doing okay as an actor. I was working and paying the bills, right? So, but it's still rejection filled all year long. So the writing would help me get my mind off it. Now, where things would start to get kind of painful is 7 years of not selling anything. I mean, think of how many scripts I'm sending out that people are saying no to.
Right, you're being rejected as an actor and a writer.
As a writer. And I had an 18-month period where I had a huge lull in my acting career. And I don't think I got hired for 18 months.
Wow.
Simultaneously, my scripts are getting passed on, right? So, yeah, that can get pretty dark. And
what do your parents say to you in those moments? Like,
I didn't really have that kind of relationship with them.
What does that mean?
I wouldn't call them and pour my heart out and talk about,
You're a Jew.
Yeah, well,
Then you're not really Jewish.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
hey, look, you're the one judging, but...
No, but I'm so shocked because when I was coming up as a rap artist, and I'm the only white rapper coming up in the '80s. Like there was nobody, and I told my mother at the table that instead of getting taking a 4-year to George Washington University for music, I'm going to be a rapper. She was like, what do you mean you're going to wrap gifts at Two Guys? Like, what do you mean wrap gifts at Macy's? And, there was this time when things weren't happening, whatever. Yeah, I had that relationship with my mother, and she'd be like, yo, stop whining. Like, put on your big boy pants, go out. You got a timeline, follow the timeline. If you don't follow it, figure it out, like whatever. So you didn't have that with your mom and dad where you could just call them and just...
No.
So who was the person that you called that said, help me? You had to have a tow line of... Was it really just you? Come on, man.
I mean, I wasn't lonely or isolated or, off in a corner. I mean, I had some really close friends. Some really close friends I would talk to about this stuff. But at the same time, there isn't a lot to say about it. Except how's it going? Not good,
I mean, that's amazing.
Not doing great right now. But also, part of it though, there was a little bit of shame in it, where I didn't want people to think that I was failing.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah, I know, but that keeps you quiet,
No, I
and
know,
that kind of keeps it kind of rolled in, and so I don't remember. I just remember it was a very tough time, that 18-month period.
Yeah, I mean, you can see my friend Adam in there. I call him when I can't find the right bagel.
I called him too. He said, find your own bagel. It got really brutal,
he's a tough...
Thanks, Adam. Thanks for nothing.
He's a real shithead, that guy. Anyway, but man, I almost want to say I'm sorry to hear that because I almost want to feel like you had like a sense of people because I remember going through 18 months of blank as well and just being like, I got to lean on somebody. I'm not strong enough. I'm not strong enough. I mean, thank goodness I had my wife. My wife and I have been together 33 years. But even outside of that, I had to have a Rolodex of people. That's how old I am. I go to the Rolodex, not contacts. Rolodex of people that I'm like, help me. What do I do? Like, where is that, So I kind of want to give you props, but at the same time, I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Like nobody?
Yeah. I wish that I had... maybe gone to therapy in my 20s. I should be in therapy now, to be honest with you. I've done it a few times, and it's always been very helpful. I think meditation's really great. I wish I'd come to that earlier.
Yeah,
because I didn't do that then.
Me neither.
But,
and I love meditation.
Yeah, I think meditation's really amazing. It's a major part of my creative process and just mental health.
It gets to clear. It clears the clutter, and you get to be able to breathe. And where are you in terms of your creative process now? What's the next project for you? What are you thinking about?
I'm toiling on a few things. I'm sort of early stages. I have a TV company now, which is very cool.
Ah, nice.
And,
Mazel tov.
Thank you. And so I'm there's.
By the way,
several-
for all my friends in hip hop, that means good looking. Congrats.
Yes, yeah, thank you. So I have a slate of projects that I'm producing that I'm not the writer of, and you know the cultural appropriation that you were talking about. Well, I'm still very passionate about you know. Giving voices to cultures that don't normally get them in mainstream entertainment. So instead of me writing them, I'm now getting people. I'm selling their projects.
That's
you know,
amazing.
I got a Puerto Rican writer. He's writing this amazing Puerto Rican.
Is it Carlito,
story.
by the way?
It's not Carlito.
Shit.
But by the way,
Carlito, I try to look out,
I
bro.
work with Carlito in a heartbeat. I've got a project called Ya Bint, which is about these Arab girls in their mid to late 20s.
Oh, wow.
And the sort of the struggle of living in Los Angeles.
But it's funny because you're almost now saying what I said about my man Big U, which is like he's the black guy with the talent who needs the white guy in the room. It's almost the same thing as what you're saying now.
I think that's kind of true. That what I'm doing is I'm using my position in the industry to help other people get their projects going. But it's not charity. I think they're great
it's never
writers, and I think their
charity.
projects are really cool, and I'm excited about them.
It's never about charity.
Yeah,
It's about unfortunately. Look, it's about what it is. It's like the appropriation line for me, and I know you got to go, and I'm not going to keep you longer. But the appropriation line, right, is that there are people like me who I didn't grow up around a lot of white people, and the white people that I grew up around will call me a schwarzer, will call me a wigger, would call me a wannabe. So I really had a disdain for white people. So when I had an opportunity to help Nas and help other artists, I made sure they got the best deals of their lives, even when it didn't benefit me the way it should have, you know? But there is this whole argument now in 2021, and if this is evergreen in 2022, 2023, which is like, yo, you shouldn't even be there in the first place now, Serch, Danny. Why do you even have to be there in the first place? Why do I even need you?
I would take it a step further. I think, to me, the ultimate goal is where it doesn't matter and we're all in it together, trying to get something great made and get something new, fresh, original, new voices.
Yeah.
You know, or they're not even new voices. You know, I sort of feel like, you know, there's something about this period right now, although I think a little less so, where it can get a little divisive.
Yeah.
And I personally, you know, I don't think that's healthy either. I think that the more collaboration of different people, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, people coming together.
Amen.
I think to me, you know, there's this phrase in the civil rights movement called the beloved community, right? Which was lifting everyone up. And to me, that was one of the reasons why I wrote The Butler, was when I read about the beloved community. And I was so moved by that and inspired by that. And it's where everyone, you know, lifts up and helps each other. And it's very idealistic, but I don't give a shit. I'll be as idealistic as I want.
No, I
you
think
know?
that's dope.
So that's sort of where I'm at. So this time we're in right now, where there's you know, passionate feelings on the subject, and I understand that passion. And so now I'm just trying to, okay, so where can I'm very practical, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, how do you get shit done? And how does that succeed, right? So it's like, well, I still have my passionate feelings on issues. So what's the best way to serve that passion?
Right.
And so So producing other people's projects and producing diverse projects as opposed to writing them myself is that outlet and that passion is leading into.
I wanted to ask you another question, just, you know, from an industry perspective, if you don't mind. And you can tell me, you know, I don't want to talk about it, and that's fine. You know, obviously Dave Chappelle is catching a lot of flack for his transgender community. I don't want to say rant because it's not, but his comedy. But what I found very disturbing is that he talked about at the end of his special, his transgender comic friend, who wound up becoming a friend of his, open for his show. That whole acknowledgement at the end, I just want you to acknowledge I'm having a human experience. and she was ridiculed to the point where she killed herself. It has come out that a lot of the ridicule came from people in the transgender community who called her a sellout, who called her all sorts of negative names. And whether that was the reason she killed herself is, we can't claim one way or the other. But there seems to me to be this zeitgeist moment, in whether it's a Me Too, but a zeitgeist Me Too, inappropriate wording, but you'll understand where I'm going. There's a zeitgeist where it's like, oh, let's jump on this now. Let's jump on Dave. He's the hottest thing out. Let's jump on Dave Chappelle. Let's not even focus on the fact that he completed his whole thought of transgender and how he feels about it and got to the point where he pointed the finger back at them. Let's just take this piece, because this will be hot for the moment. This will give us a platform. This will give us all of this, right? Do you feel that he's being victimized? Do you see the story not being completed?
I see the story completed, so I'm going to go like full First Amendment on this one.
Please.
Which is how I feel about the issue, which is I think he has the right to do his comedy. They have the right to protest it to the level that they are. And Ted Sarandos has the right to keep it on the air. You know, and to he's the head of Netflix, right?
Right.
So I'm, you know, I hope this doesn't sound like a cop out, but I'm kind of on everyone's side on this. I totally understand the transgender.
You're so sensible. You're such a sensible person.
But I get the transgender community being furious and wanting to speak out about his act, right? And I get his act, right? I've seen a lot of Dave Chappelle. The one thing about Dave Chappelle is that you know, it's not as if it's all Candyland except in the transgender community. I mean, he's like, he rips into everyone, right? I mean, it's even in that special, right? He did a whole spiel on a friend of mine once and ripped the hell out of him, and you know, it was very funny. Well, you know,
right.
But it was and it, you know, it was Chappelle, right? So I respect him doing his work as an artist, and I totally respect them lambasting him for it and saying this, we don't like this and this upsets us, and I really appreciate Netflix not canceling it, you know, and because it'd be easy to just cancel it, right? And so I kind of think it's I think there's a lot of interesting, cool things that are being discussed in many ways, and I'm not going to talk about who I think is good or bad or right or not. I'm just sort of I love the discussion. I kind of love the fire that's going on here.
Yeah.
And that's where I stand.
And where you stand, and it's funny because I pulled this quote up because I think it's you, and I think you hit you right on the head. You said, I write characters for every race, gender, and sexual orientation. I write some characters that are animals. That's just my job. To me, writing Empire is not more difficult than Sarah Palin in Game Change. I mean, I'm not a Republican from Alaska.
That's true.
So thank you. No, but thank
Yeah.
you for being consistent. Thank you for being the white guy in black spaces who doesn't kowtow, who doesn't pretend to be something they're not. Because I do think that at the end of the day, brothers like you in rooms like that do elevate the equality question. You're not trying to be something you're not. You're not trying to walk in with an affect. You're not trying to listen to Drake and act cool. You're not trying to wear a Bape, hoodie. You're who you are. And that authenticity speaks volumes in not only the work you're doing, but the work you'll continue to do. And I'm just so thankful that we got to spend some time together, man.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you.
really appreciate all that.
Yeah,
I
man.
do. It means a lot, and I think that's I think you kind of summed me up right. I don't go into the Empire writers' room, trying to be anything other than the short nerdy Jew.
Yeah.
And
you play that
that's
very,
my role.
very well. Yes. Well played, sir.
Thank you.
This is Serch Says. Danny Strong, man, his show, among other shows, Dopesick is out now on Hulu. Catch that, rep that. But more importantly, if you know someone who is who has addiction, make them watch it and hopefully help them get the help they need. This is Serch Says. If you like our show, subscribe. they can find you on Instagram. Is there any place that you want people to subscribe and send notes and messages?
Well, I'm on @DannyStrong at Instagram and @DannyStrong on Twitter. I'm more active on Twitter than Instagram, but I'm on Instagram as well.
Okay, good. Very simple. Cuts to the chase. He doesn't have sexy Danny Strong as an Instagram. There's no OG Danny
I spelled
Strong.
sexy wrong. I used 2 X's. I'm like, wait, how do you spell it? I can't remember. Where's my Allegra?
Then you really took that from Prince right there.
There you go.
All right. Cool.